Well, hello everyone. Greetings. My name is Frida Nixdorf, and I am a weaver of the Work That Reconnects network and your host for today's webinar. I'm joining today from the ancestral homelands of the Nisenan people on Turtle Island, lands commonly referred to as Grass Valley in Northern California. I'm delighted to welcome you today on behalf of the Work That Reconnects network. So thank you for joining us today for our Webinars and Conversation Cafe program, where we are providing a wide range of rich educational and supportive online events for our global Work That Reconnects community. Our intention is to strengthen the web of the community while reaching beyond its current edges to weave deeper connections with others who are contributing to the Great Turning in diverse and complementary ways. So today we are excited to welcome Hilary Giovale for Becoming a Good Relative, Calling White Settlers Toward Truth, Healing, and Repair. Foundational to the Work That Reconnects are deep time practices that activate our moral imagination and bring us into relation with our ancestors and future ones. And this work can reveal painful truths about past and present generations that call for acknowledgement, grief, and reparations as we actively work toward a more just and regenerative future. In today's webinar, Hilary will share how she learned that she descends from early Euro-American settlers who received grants of stolen indigenous land and enslaved people of African descent. As Hilary grappled with these difficult ancestral legacies, the support of diverse communities encouraged her to write her book, Becoming a Good Relative, Calling White Settlers Toward Truth, Healing, and Repair. So realizing that she is a ninth generation of this colonial legacy inspired Hilary to rethink everything that she had been taught about her family's history, whiteness, the Doctrine of Discovery, and American exceptionalism. Ultimately, her decision to face the past led her to develop practices of ancestral healing, divesting from whiteness, personal reparations, and following the leadership of Indigenous and African-American communities toward co-creating more peaceful and equitable futures. And now I am delighted to hand it over to Hilary. Thank you for being with us today, Hilary.
Thank you so much for having me, Frida and Rachel. I really appreciate your help and the invitation to be here with all of you today. And I have been hearing so much about the Work That Reconnects for a long time. I've heard so many good things, and I've never been part of this network before, but I know we are kindred and we share a lot of overlap in what we do and how we practice. So I'm just grateful to be with you all today and look forward to being in dialogue together. So I want to just begin by sharing that I am sitting in my home right now. I live on Hopi, Havasupai, Dene, Apache, Pueblo land, among other nations. And I am sitting at the foot of a sacred being who is a mountain. And she is right over my right shoulder today, to the north. And in the Dene language, her name is Doko Oslid. In English, she is called San Francisco Peaks. And one of her peaks was recently renamed at the state level. It was formerly called Agassiz Peak, named after Louis Agassiz, who was someone who enacted white supremacist violence through his research. And there were a group of Native youth who had that peak renamed to Omauki Peak, which in the Hopi language means house of the clouds. So we are all really in her presence today because I am, and I'm sharing that with you. And what I've been told about her by Indigenous friends is that she is a being of kinship. She's a grandmother. She carries the medicine of love. And I have lived here for over 30 years. And when I first moved here, I had no idea about these concepts, of sacred landscape. I had never ever heard of such a thing. But what I've been told by my community is that this mountain is so powerful. She works on people who live within her range, whether we're aware or not. And I feel that she has been working on me ever since I've been here. And everything I can share with you today is from being in relationship with her. I don't think any of these things would have happened if I hadn't been, receiving her blessing, her insights, the energy that she carries in this landscape. So I just want to share about her and name her with honor and respect. And she is an elder for me, and she is someone I care deeply about. So I wanted to begin with that. And also, if you would like to share whose land you are on, if you are on Indigenous land right now, which all of us are, and if we live on Turtle Island, we're all on Indigenous land, feel free to do that in the chat if you like, because I think it's important to name our places and honor the original peoples of the lands where we live. Um, and, I would also be curious to know if anyone would like to share in the chat, what's alive for you today? What are you curious about? Are there things that you would like to bring into the dialogue today that are up for you? So feel free to share that as well. And maybe we can, if we see some of those questions about curiosities coming into the chat. Is there anyone that you would like to share, or maybe Frida or Rachel would like to draw out some specific ones?
Yeah, I can keep my eyes on the chat for you, Hilary.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, well, let me go ahead. Unless, are there any that you're seeing right now?
I did have a request that you type the mountain name in chat.
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
This is the name in Dene Bazad, but it also has many other names in the other indigenous languages of this region. And I am not very good at pronouncing those other names, but that's one of many. I just want to share that it's one of many. So yeah, thank you for that question. And so I would like to go ahead and basically share, a little bit of an orientation of what my work is about, what this book is about that I published. It was published almost a year ago on October 1st, and it has been an incredible year to have this body of work being shared in this way. And I'm really grateful because I feel like it has created a lot of connections and dialogues that was really my prayer in bringing this forward. For me, it's never been about book sales or anything like that, but it's really about generating conversations and dialogue and healing. And so that has happened in a lot of ways, and I'm really grateful for this almost year now that the book has been out in the world. And there are a lot of topics in this book that are difficult, especially for those of us who have been acculturated into white culture. um, Topics like white supremacy and settler colonialism and the horrific violence that took place in the process of colonizing this land and taking it from the original peoples of this land, the indigenous people. It includes, what it means to be a descendant of enslavers and finding out the names of the people that my family enslaved and the monetary amounts that they were being bought and sold for, and the absolute heartache and moral injury that comes along with understanding that. And so there are many difficult topics that are part of this. And you may have feelings that come up during our session today. You may feel uncomfortable. You may feel resistance. You may want to argue. You may have an icky feeling in your stomach. And all of that, I just want to say is okay. It's okay because part of the thing about settler colonialism is that it's all about erasure and it's all about silence. And so it means that many of us have not had the opportunity and have not developed the skills to be able to talk about these things. We as a culture, especially, and I'm referring to white culture right now, of which I'm part, we tend to be very, we tend to be better at keeping our mouths shut and being silent about these things than we are about engaging in dialogue. And, it's very easy to be invested in that silence because it tends to not rock the boat. It's sometimes having these conversations is considered rude or out of place, out of line. And so, one of the things that I'm hoping to do with my work is to normalize that we can talk about these things and it's okay. And if we feel guilt or shame or anger or we get triggered, that's something that we can endure and we can work through it together. And it's not something that means that we need to stop talking about it at all. So, as we're in this process today, I just encourage you to notice how you feel in your body and your heart intuitively and take care of yourself, whatever that means. If it means that you need to turn your camera off and go take a deep breath and get a glass of water, that's okay. If it means that you need to reach out to a friend after the session today and ask for support, that's okay. If it means that you need to, put a question in the chat or even name, I'm feeling anxious about this, that's okay. We have the space and the capacity to hold all of that in the container that we're making today. So just know that all of you is welcome as we work through this. And so let's see. I'm wondering if anyone would like to share anything about how you're feeling right now, about tuning into your body and noticing how you feel. And maybe Frida and Rachel, if you want to read some of those out, that
Yeah.
might be good to hear.
Yeah. And if anybody does want to share, you can just use the raise hand emoji and we can bring you in. But just a couple of comments in the chat that I've been noticing. Someone said, saddled with colonizer guilt, looking for a positive direction from this experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so common. And I've been through that myself. I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you in a minute, so that you can know that you're not alone. Because, the guilt and the shame is tends to be isolating. So I think when you name it like that, it loses some of its power. So thank you for naming it.
Yeah. I did see a a human hand up. Paul D. Did you want to, do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you. I feel what this is all about. I want to tell you that we are present, my husband and I, George, and I'm Dro Winter. My birth name is Dorothy, which I've sort of denied. I found out later in my life that I had American Indian ancestry and probably further back, like 9 generations. Maybe some of our African American slaves, in other words. We are presently living on the Umatilla, Cayuse, Walla Walla land. And as I watch the river, the Umatilla River is practically at our back door. And I see what's happening. There used to be trails for the deer to go by. So becoming a friend of the river has been important. But I want to tell you that everywhere I have gone from Ketchikan, Alaska, where the Tlingit and the Haida and the Tsimshian were some of the last people to be settled, I have been loved. in a
Mhm.
way that I was never loved in what we call the settler world. Uh,
Mhm.
and it is amazing that you have that love. We were accepted out at the reservation here when they were checking people to see if they were positive for COVID. And the women that were checking us were so kind, and they actually gave us masks. And I'm one of those unregistered people. There's so many unregistered people. So I just want to say thank you. My heart's full.
Mm, thank you for sharing that. Wow. Yeah, I can relate that I'm in the same boat that so much kindness and generosity and forgiveness has been extended to me by Indigenous peoples and communities. And just like the mountain I mentioned here, none of this that I'm sharing today would have happened without those relationships and that incredible generosity that was extended. And it's like a miracle to me. I can't even believe it still. so, so yeah, you're right. That principle of all my relations and radical acceptance is a tenet of many indigenous cultures. Even though the cultures are all different, they're all distinct, they're diverse, they're unique, many of them also carry that teaching. And that is extraordinary, and especially in light of all that has happened here. So thank you for bringing that forward. And I want to just echo that too. Oh, I see that someone is feeling tense too. I'm just going to look at that one real quick. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and there's Juliana is here with a question too.
Okay. Hi, Juliana.
Hi. So I just wanted to share, first of all, thank you for being here and thank you for doing this. Something that's on my mind is that just this feeling like I don't have a culture as a white person. I think for my ancestors, the closest thing that they have had to a culture was going to church every week. And that's not something that I really care to take on. But there's like an absence that I'm feeling because of that. And I feel like this inclination to latch onto other cultures, like the indigenous cultures, and I wonder if that's ethical. So that's just something that's on my mind.
Mm, thank you for raising that, Juliana. That is so right on point. That's a very important issue. And one thing I can share is that in my process, I've been working through this stuff for 10 years. It started just before I turned 40, and right now I'm 50. And that was a strong pull for me too. And I felt so much grief that I I didn't feel that I had a culture. And the culture that was available was one of white supremacy and consumption and extractive capitalism and patriarchal religion and things like that I really didn't want to be associated with. And so I feel you. And one thing I can share just as a little thumbnail is that, while I was writing my book, I had many, many people offer feedback, which was a tremendous support. One of those people was Lila June Johnston, who's a Dene scholar and poet and artist and speaker. And she said to me, after working through the whole manuscript with me, she said, this book will not be complete until you write the third part, which is the part about recovering European ancestral memory. And I was terrified. That was not the first time I had heard that. I heard it from many, many Indigenous people, and I had a huge amount of resistance to doing it. And Lila said to me, you need to go find some elders and start learning. And so I did. I began studying with a couple different elders who taught songs and stories and mythology of the Scottish Highlands, which is part of my ancestry, and Ireland, which is part. I now study with a group called Healing Roots in Minnesota through their Nordic Germanic study groups, because that's also part of my ancestry. And all of that study has taught me that, in fact, I do descend from people, and so do you, so do all of us. We all descend from people who had culture that predates whiteness, that predates patriarchal religion, that predates white supremacy, and all of the problematic things that are going on right now. And so it was tremendously healing to begin that process of study and to realize, even though much of it has been destroyed through the history in Europe, through the Roman expansion, through the witch hunts, through the Inquisition, through all the displacement of people and taking lands and shaming their languages, all of that, a lot has been lost, but there are still things that are visible. And based on those little threads that are left, we can reweave something that's beautiful, that's a different culture for ourselves today, that's based in ancestral wisdom. And we're going to do a little ritual today that is an example of what that can look like. So I just wanted to share that with you, and also know that you're not alone. I had many years of pain and struggle around this topic too. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm noticing a request also. I saw a comment about a body being very ready for some transformational work around this topic, but also a request to like bring us back into our bodies. So if we could just take a moment there, and if there's other questions too, you can start putting your hands up. And yeah.
Let's go ahead and feel our feet on the floor. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can. And let's just take a breath that fills up all the corners of our bodies. And feel fully expanded like a balloon. And then gently and slowly exhale. And whenever you feel the need, I just encourage all of us to take that breath. Maybe I like to put my hands on top of my knees and just feel my legs, feel myself connected to the floor, which is connected to the ground, connected to the earth, connected to the breath, which is, really a sacred connection to the divine, to the air all around us, to the trees. And so, yeah, we're always welcome to return back to that place. And it looks like someone has their hand raised too.
Jumping moon.
Sorry about that. I have kids in the background. I did have a question. Personally, I grew up, my mother's a Native activist and historian, and I'm the oldest of her 6 children. So I lived in a suburban neighborhood and then in Washington State, and we go work with the Puyallup tribe, and we would teach them what they didn't know about themselves. And, my mother read in she was also raised kind of hidden from the 60s scoop, and told she wasn't Indigenous. That's why she left home early, went to Colorado and Sac State, and, got her degrees out there. She also later on became a Jehovah's Witness. And as a child, powwows, the circuit, that always came first. And so when I left home early also, I thought it was kind of hypocritical to be both Christian and Indigenous, because it doesn't feel in alignment in my soul. And so I prayed about what life path I needed. And ironically, I got messages and very clear that for me to study the Bible myself and to really find that truth in there. I studied as a Jehovah's Witness, and I was baptized also. And for about 15, 20 years, having my children brought me out of it, because I saw how stuck I was. They're asking questions that I was called woo-woo before, and, told I was weird, but just, so I kind of went back to my Indigenous roots through meeting, through synchronicity, of course, my Auntie Wope and my cousin Maria, in Northern and Southern California, to learn, my ways, ancestral ways. And my Auntie Wope talks about how, our European blood came and mixed with our native ancestry for a purpose. Like, they knew that there was knowledge of earth-based wisdom that we had, and that helped them keep their stories sacred and their worship sacred as well. So I recently had like children co-op, sacred earth circles and stuff like that, and I hold women's circles. What I've come across is people saying that I'm racist against white people. And, all my husbands were white. My last husband, the love of my life and father of my child, passed away on Mother's Day 5 years ago. And I found out how connected he was to the Nordic roots. And so he's one of our ancestors now. So for someone to say that to me, is I'm like, oh, I must have said something or I must be vibrating something out there that it doesn't feel correct, or doesn't feel like it's in harmony, that I do love and appreciate every human, but whiteness isn't, it's a mentality. It doesn't mean that's who you are in your soul. And then I'm also coming across like ceremonies that are being brought over from South America. I'm in Florida, and they're charging large amounts of money to where I can't afford it at all. And I'm just like, it's kind of hurting my feelings that other elders are being brought to these lands, when I know that there's elders on these lands that would be honored and would be uplifted if they were able to share their truths. And so I'm like, why aren't we going to the elders here? Why are we bringing elders from other countries and then glorifying them and charging thousands of dollars to spend 3 days with them, when that's not our culture? And so I feel like that's also kind of a whitewashing thing that's kind of happening, but it's kind of in the Indigenous realms, and it's kind of confusing for me because I don't charge for my circles. So I'm kind of like in the middle of like, how do I come? Yeah. I feel complete.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jumpy Moon. And I really resonate with what you're saying. One of the main tenets that was taught to me was that ceremony is not for sale. And, I know there's a lot of that going on. And I think the reason that's going on is because of the spiritual poverty that has been created through whiteness and through settler colonialism, because there's a market for it now, right? And because so many Indigenous communities have been forcibly impoverished, but are still culturally rich. And so we've got a setup that's happening, and it's harmful. Yeah. I've been taught that by many elders, that, ceremony is never for sale and prayer is not for sale. So I think you're raising a really important point. And also the whole thing about, creating that binary between white and Indigenous, and you can only either be one or the other, and you have to choose sides. I don't think that's true either. And yeah, there's a way to be critical of whiteness as a social construct without hating white people, And I think it's good to be critical of whiteness as a construct, because it was created in order to consolidate wealth and power and land. That was the purpose of it. It was created and engineered for a very specific purpose. But in a lot of ways, it's not really who we are. It's just a construct. So, yeah, thank you for raising those stories and those points. I'm wondering if maybe I should share just a little bit of the story of how I got into this work. Would that be helpful, Frida, just before we move on?
That would be great.
Okay. Well, so like I shared with you, I live in what is now known as Northern Arizona. adjacent to the Navajo Nation and Hopi land. And this land is, the ancestral homeland of 13 nations since the beginning of time. And so right before I turned 40, I began building relationships with people, Indigenous people of this region for the first time. And it was so eye-opening because I had really been living in segregation until that time, which is very easy to do in many of our communities. It's very easy to be segregated. And so I suddenly began building relationships and seeing things differently. And some of the points that have already been raised about not feeling like I had a culture and feeling in awe of these indigenous cultures, that all began to unfold. And I was in the course of those interactions, I was invited to take part in an indigenous fasting ceremony. And so I began. I didn't have any idea why I was doing that, but I just felt intuitively drawn to it. And it was completely out of the norm for what my personality had always been like. But I began that process. It was a 4-year commitment of sitting on the land for several days at a time without food or water and praying. And I really didn't know why I was out there, but I began my prayer. And very shortly after that first ceremony, what started to happen is that my ancestors started to reach out to me. And I started, these weird synchronistic things began happening, and these coincidences and people and places and things. And I created an ancestor altar in my house. And I began reaching out to my ancestors and saying, what do you want me to know? And within a couple of months, a book of genealogy landed in my hands. It had been written by my great uncle in the 90s. And no one had been talking about it in the family for all these decades. I opened it up, and overnight, on the last night of 2015, realized that I'm descended from a man who immigrated from the Scottish Highlands in 1739 to what was now called North Carolina, that his grandson received land grants and later went to Mississippi, where he received a land grant of stolen Choctaw land that was signed by Andrew Jackson. And he and his descendants enslaved people in Mississippi. And so this knowing, when it landed on me on the last night of 2015, created a massive spiritual crisis and massive identity crisis, all of it. It was just completely overwhelming. I was filled with shame and dread and remorse. And also, I began spending time on the land here on this sacred land and received the instructions: you need to work through this. You need to grieve it. You need to process it. You need to speak about this with all of your living relatives. So that's, in my case, that's my parents, and my children are all still alive. And, you are the generation who's going to begin this process of breaking the silence and working through this. And so that is how this book got its start. And, when I say book, I mean, it's really a whole body of work. It's not just a book, but the book captures some of what it's about. And it was a long and arduous process to work through these things. And I had many, many helpers who graciously helped along the way and brought healing to that grief, to that guilt, the shame, who accepted me, even knowing who I descend from. That was a huge miracle, in my opinion, to be accepted, to be loved, to be forgiven, even though there was this horrific legacy that I'm carrying, and ultimately moving into reparations. And so that's a little of the background of how this came to be. And I should we pause there? Are there any questions before we move into to our opening ritual?
I know that the ritual is going to help with this, Hilary,
Okay.
and what we're doing here today, but there are a couple of questions about appropriation and challenges sort of trusting our ability to make decisions, ethical decisions about navigating this. And I feel like
Mm.
there's these synchronicities of you being in these situations where you're just held, and curious about if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, actually, there's a part of my book where I outlined 10 steps that white settlers can take to learn from other cultures respectfully and honorably. And I have my own path of cultural appropriation. I was a tribal style belly dancer and teacher of that art form for many years, which is based in appropriation and commodification of cultural knowledge that was taken by a bunch of white ladies in the 90s and who put trademarks on it, you know? And so, because of that, I've looked really deeply at it. And one thing that has surprised me in that journey, as I've consulted with, BIPOC mentors and teachers, is that I have not heard it's not okay to learn from us. I haven't heard that. What I have heard is if you're going to learn from these cultures, you need to do it in a specific way, in a way that's reciprocal, respectful, grounded, and ultimately you need to return to your own roots once you pass through that portal. And so it's a little bit more nuanced than sometimes the dialogue about cultural appropriation can be. It can be very black and white and very shaming and blaming, but the path I found is it has a lot more nuance to it and more, more discernment. There's no one size fits all answer to that question. That's what I found. So, yeah, I hope that helps.
That's helpful. And before we go into the practice, there's also a question here from Claire in the chat. Aside from reference of your enslaving ancestors, it feels like Black people are missing in this conversation so far. And I just want to acknowledge that. Maybe we'll return to it. And maybe this is a good time to just say something.
Yeah, I can share that where I live, I mostly have had access to Indigenous communities rather than African American. And so most of my teachers have been Native people, and that's probably why it feels that way. But as I've gone along, um, the interest has really bubbled up, and the impulse to make reparations as well to African American communities, and to, when I can, to learn from and connect with Black people, because that is part of my story as well, part of my ancestral legacy. So it's been more of a question of exposure, who I've been exposed to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This ritual is one that initially I was taught to pray this way by a Tewa elder named Kathy Sanchez, who works with Tewa Women United. And she told me water carries memory, water imprints with everything we say, with our prayers, with our songs, right? We can bless ourselves with water, we can heal ourselves with water. And water carries ancestral memory. So Kathy Sanchez was the first person to teach me that, and she gave me permission to share my understanding of that. But over time, as I began studying my ancestral cultures, I realized they were also working with water in these ways. They were praying with sacred springs and wells. Some of them were sitting out by bodies of water overnight to receive instructions and guidance. And so praying with water and treating water as a being goes back, again, it was first taught to me by an Indigenous person, but it goes back to my own ancestors as well. So this is a recreation of that practice. And there's a bowl that I have here that has a spell inside, which I've also been told is part of this is a European technology to write a spell inside of a vessel and then fill it with liquid of some kind. And I'm going to read this spell to you before I put the water in it. So let me see. I've got to find the beginning here. Another thing that's interesting about this bowl is that in order to read the spell, you have to turn the bowl counterclockwise, which I've been taught is the direction of the feminine. So here we go. Calling in the elements of water, earth, fire as our witnesses, calling in the benevolent ancestors committed to the healing of our lineage, calling in the wisdom of the stones and bones to be with us as we reckon with what has been taken and what has been lost. Be with us as we seek to remember our humanity through returning what was stolen. Be with us as we recreate how to pray, how to listen, how to be with land and life once again. Circle round us as we set down legacies of domination, separation, and supremacy. As we set these down, may we pick up life-affirming systems rooted in care and liberation for all beings. As we set down capitalism, white supremacy, and colonization, may we pick up the possibilities of our wholeness and belonging. We are here to recover and reweave a tapestry of balance for our people. We are here for redistribution and reparations. We are here to reveal ourselves to ourselves. We are here to embody a different story, to make different decisions and live different lives than many who came before us. May the healing we do here ripple out in all directions. May it spiral far and wide throughout our lineages, through the root to the origin, beyond knowable space and time. I trust deeply in my life as a prayer. May I be well used, may I be well used for healing, liberation, and repair. Blessed be. So I think did you all put that the text of that prayer in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So on there you'll see the names of the author of this prayer, and as well as it was Ale Blakely who made this bowl. And so if you want one, you could even get in touch with her and ask her to make you one. But I pray with this bowl every day at my ancestor altar because I feel like this prayer is encapsulating everything I'm trying to do to walk. This is the way I'm trying to walk in the world. What this said. So before I pour the water in, I'm going to light a candle. And this is a song that was taught to me by Sheena McKenna. It was recovered from a very old text from the Scottish Highlands and the Hebrides in a book called Carmina Gadelica. It was a book of folklore that was compiled by a folklorist in the 1800s and early 1900s. And this is a song to kindle the fire for the day. And it calls on the goddess Brija, who is a very old European goddess who is still known and revered in Ireland and Scotland, especially. And she is a goddess of poetry, blacksmithing, healing, and transformation. And it calls on her to bless the space, bless the floor and the household and the entire world with each morning when we light the fire. So here's that song. Toki mi shantula, marahaka mora. Toki mi shantula, marahaka mora. Kain vrija espura, serantula, saran lord, seran articula, serantulula, kain vrijor. So there's our lit fire, and I'm going to pour this water in the bowl, and I invite you to do this with me to address your water and your candle if you have one, and just allow these elements to be with us. These are elements that are common to all of humanity. If you think about it, all of our ancestors had important relationships with fire and water. And so this is a way that we can recreate ritual, really calling on the elements that give us life as human beings. And so we'll sit with this candle and the water throughout our time. And at the end, I'll invite you to offer your water outside or to a plant, so that the messages that are shared here today can go back to the land. So with that, I think, are we ready to move into the invitation to personal writing?
Yeah, and before we do, actually, there's another comment in chat that I just want to drop into for a moment. Bert says, I've heard Francis Weller say, white people need to grieve into the emptiness of the space a lack of culture has left in us, instead of filling it with all the consuming. How important of a role do you think community grief rituals may play in our responsibilities as white settlers? And I also just want to like note in the work that reconnects, we do have this empty bowl, and it is that object is brought into many rituals, and that space of the emptiness of the despair, the not knowing, that feeling of lack. And so I'm wondering if you can just speak to that as we've filled our bowls, but sometimes these bowls are empty as well.
Yes, and actually, I just saw Jeffrey Hotchkiss's name pop up. Jeffrey has been part of some very deep work that I have been part of, and I'm wondering if Jeffrey would like to even address that question, because I know that he has done that grief work. How do you feel, Jeffrey? Do you want to be put on the spot?
So I'm just going to say a few words because I just had parathyroid surgery yesterday, so
Oh, okay.
observe my voice.
Okay.
So just broad brushstrokes. Had a vision a long time ago before all of this uh, um, direct involvement came to me, and that was a vision of falling through the void, and being terrified at the blackness and the emptiness and the smashing and dissipation of all the things that I had known and formed my identity, and struggling mightily to hang on to something, and then in the middle of that, just asking myself, well, nothing else is working. What if I just let go of it all? And then poof, I came to a land of connection. And so so I followed a similar path to you, Hilary, in terms of I call it a spiritual emergency when I found out about my ancestors' brutality, in inventing weapons of brutality and massacre. And so I was floundering for a number of years, and then found and resisting the emptiness, and then found projects that were filling that emptiness in a good way, in a connection between white settler and native peoples. And so, but you have to be, you learn through support from others to be comfortable with that emptiness. And it's like the center of the circle. Some of the circles that I found myself in of ceremony, always it seemed to be that they're at the peak of the ceremony, a being from the sky would fly right over the center. So in one case, it was an osprey, and other it was an eagle, and another one it was a hawk, and then a butterfly. This butterfly just flitted right over the fire. Brave little butterfly. And so so there is something to be found in the emptiness. And that's it for my voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks for playing along, even though you just had surgery. Yeah. Yeah, I think grief is essential. Grief work is essential. Yeah. So, should we move to the next part, Frida, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a good time.
Okay. So, I want to invite us all to do a little bit of personal writing on our own. And it has to do with ancestry and imagination. Imagination plays a huge role in this work because many of us have lost our connection to our ancestors, and we've come to think of ourselves as individuals who have nothing to do with them, right? And so, this is an invitation to imagine your ancestors. And it could be that you want to imagine some that you know were part of problematic things like slavery or, land theft. It could be that you want to imagine ones that are much older than that, who maybe lived thousands of years ago. It could be that you want to imagine other than human ancestors, like trees or water, and just take a few minutes to feel these ancestors. Ask them if there's anything that they want you to know about. Have curiosity about what they asked for you to be when they were alive, who they were imagining you to become, things like that. So this is just kind of an open exploration of ancestors and what they might be wanting us to know and do and think about right now. And just a reminder too, as you do this, it's important to sit in a space of compassion for yourself. If this is hard, if you feel a blockage, that's normal. And hold that gently and know that it can transform over time. And so yeah, that we'll just take a few minutes and do a little bit of journaling, and then we will let's see, we're going to be going into some small groups after this to share anything that wants to be shared that comes up during this writing time. So enjoy the connection.
All right, are we ready to start moving into small groups? I just want to frame this space as we go into these smaller rooms. We're going to be using open sentences, which are one of the basic practices of the work that reconnects. You will hopefully find yourself in a space with two others, so three of you. It doesn't always work out that way. There's some coming and going, so just adjust with who you find yourselves with. Take a moment to land, to organize yourselves, decide who's going to go first, who's going to go second, who's going to go third. Open sentences, we have a sentence starter, and Rachel's going to put those sentence starters in the chat, not for pre-planning, just so that you have a sense of what they are. And we encourage you to just step into the moment with the sentence starter. So it would look like this, the first person, and this will be timed, and I'll be broadcasting timing and inviting you when to switch to the next person as we go through. So they'll be timed, I think we have 2 minutes each. So first person, when I feel who my ancestors are, I notice. And then for 2 minutes, just whatever comes. I notice a feeling of grief, of loneliness. I feel empty. When I feel who my ancestors are, I notice questions like there's some mystery. Who are they? I feel this presence, but I also feel this. So however that is for you, and in open sentences, there's no crosstalk. It's just 2 minutes for this person to share. And if if no words come, you can return to the open sentence. When I feel who my ancestors are, I notice. And if it's silence, let it be silence for the full time. It may be song, it may be movement, it may be some language that comes through you or that you feel moved to share in. And so we'll go first person, second person, third person, and then we'll move into the second one. When I sense my ancestral legacy or inheritance. All right, welcome back. Thank you, Hilary.
Thank you. I just saw a comment. It helps to know I'm not alone. Absolutely. That is one of the greatest benefits of doing this together in community, because it's real easy to internalize these feelings as though it's some kind of individual problem, and it's not. It's a collective, these are collective issues that we're facing. So we can really support each other. And thank you for doing that in your groups. So yeah, I'm wondering if I think we have about 10 minutes to share. If anyone would like to share, maybe without naming names, but just in general, were there themes that you heard or something that you would like to share personally with the community here of what came up?
And you can share in chat, and also we invite you to use the raise hand emoji, and we'll call you in. Would be great to hear from you. And I see Gabriella.
Yeah, what emerged for me, and I think it's something that we are looking happening, how the manipulation of words and many it's religious words, how it is so manipulative, and it's a lot of manipulation of people's minds, and how there's this naivety of people just like going with what's there in the community just to belong, or but it's just shocking, the manipulation with lies and with religion, and it creates so much madness.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. Yeah.
See it happening now, yeah, in different places, and just like shocking. But I think that's how I was brought up, and what happened before, yeah, with all this religious manipulation.
Yes, yes. And Gabriella, too, I think part of the reason we are so vulnerable to that manipulation is that we have not been talking about these things honestly. It's all been under the rug, it's all been denied. And so it makes us susceptible to delusion.
Yeah, and then if you talk about it, then you are being evil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very tricky. The whole plan is tricky.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
One thing I can share too, I've worked with a lot of different elders of different cultures and backgrounds through this work. And one thing they've told me is that the most important thing that we can be doing right now is connecting to the land where we are in respectful, reciprocal, humble ways, going out and making offerings of water or food or songs, and really building relationships with the land, because there's something about that that enables this ancestral healing to happen from a really grounded place. So I wanted to mention that too.
I wanted to note that, and we've been doing these webinars for 5 years and monthly, and on this one, only a couple of folks were not able to join breakout rooms. I mean, it was like 2 or 3, and it's so brings me so much joy to see that willingness to lean into each other and be in these small spaces. And then I'm just seeing a lot of comments about how it felt to be in that space of honesty and sharing with each other. So yeah, thank you. We had some of that in the main room here too. How do we connect with the land where we are?
Did someone ask that?
Rachel.
Okay, yeah. You know, it can be very simple. It's about tuning into your intuition, first of all, going out maybe with some water in a bottle or a little bit of food and listening for, is there a tree or a rock or a place by the stream that is welcoming to you, and listening for that, going to that place if you feel it and asking permission to sit and listening for the answer and trusting the answer that you hear, whether it's yes or no. And if you hear yes, sitting down, making an offering and saying, I am a child of the earth and I'm asking to sit with you, and I would like to give you this gift in return. And then simply sitting there and listening. And this is something that has in many cases been trained out of us by Western style education. You know, we've been taught that we can't trust those voices, and that we should always be the ones talking rather than the land talking to us. But there is so much peace and healing and balance to be found by listening to the land. And, you know, for me, that practice also goes hand in hand with honoring the ancestors of the land where we are, making an offering to them too, and saying, you know, I'm a more recent child of this land, but I acknowledge that you were here long before my people came here, and I honor you. You know, and then asking our own ancestors for help. That's another critical piece in my experience, is learning to say, you know, to call specifically on the ancestors who are ready to help us, the ones who are, you know, coming from a place of love and wholeness, and asking them to help us. And I've been taught that, you know, ancestors that's one of the essential roles that they play, is to help their living descendants, but that we have to ask them. They can't do it without our consent. So these are all things that can help and bolster the strength that is needed to go through these very difficult topics.
Thank you. And we have a question. Do you have time for a question?
Mm-hmm.
Azul?
Hi, Azul.
Hello.
We met in France. Do you remember that?
We did. This is a beautiful moment. I just want to say, first of all, free Palestine. My whole being is taken over by everything that's going on in Palestine. I'm from Lebanon. And because my computer didn't work, I was in a small group, just being witness. I couldn't speak. And I just want to acknowledge that role as witness without talking, because that was an accident, so-called. And I was in a beautiful group. 3 people spoke and shared about their grief. And I was very moved, but I couldn't speak because it was not working and I couldn't be seen. So I want to acknowledge my small group and say I have been a witness to you. And yeah, Hilary, thank you so much. You know, it's can I say, maybe I'll just carry on spinning that thread. But I was born in Beirut, so I was a child in the war, not in the land where you are, not in the land where many of you are, I noticed. Can I say, I'm very moved. Maybe I'll end this sharing with, I feel we are like a very large compost heap. And I trust that, and I have faith in compost, and I don't need to define or understand or feel secure about my understanding about what's going on tonight. Well, I am in the night. I'm in France right now. Yeah, my heart is very troubled, and because there's so much to love that is suffering. And when you speak about listening to the land, I think of Palestine. And I think, how do you listen to ashes? How do you listen to rubbles? How do you listen to screaming children or dead ones? So maybe I just wanted to bring my grief because I trust it. And it is a true question. How do you listen to land that is burning to ashes? Way before a phoenix arise, there's that big void, that big space in between where everything is dying and there's nothing to hear. And that is a word in Arabic called sumud, right? From the global sumud flotilla, which means steadfastness. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Azul. I appreciate you and your transparency. These are difficult times. And this disease of settler colonialism is not a thing of the past. It's a thing of the present moment. So it's almost like we're going through many layers of time and space all at once in a spiral. It's not a linear path. How should we move into the reparations piece, Frida?
Yeah, this feels like the right time, and also just the invitation to like feel our bodies. Like, remember that our bodies are the earth, that we are earth, that we're held by the earth.
We are held by the earth, and also our bodies are our ancestors. Literally, we are made up of their DNA, their blood, their bones, but we're walking around in the present moment and telling the next chapter of the family story, and maybe rewriting the family story to become something else. So let's just take a breath. Maybe send a little silent prayer for anyone in the world who's suffering right now. And in the topic of reparations, this goes back to an earlier question about, the African-American influence and community, and me being a descendant of enslavers. And I can share that I one time had a most incredible experience of, I'll try to sum it up quickly here, but the full story is in the book. And, all I can say is that, to my utter surprise, some of the ancestors whom my family members enslaved came to me and gave a healing ritual for the family, my family, to do 3 generations. And we did that together, and we experienced so much healing. So many tears fell, prayers were made. We asked for, we apologized and we asked for forgiveness. And I asked for their help in stepping into making reparations. And that is how this process of a personal reparations plan started for me. And so there's a Google Doc to share. And this is just open for everybody. If anyone wants to use it or share it, you're most welcome to. And, what I have found over the last several years of working and developing my own personal reparations plan is that for those of us who carry this lineage of settler colonialism and stolen land and enslaving people and extractive capitalism and all of this harm that has taken place in the past and currently, making reparations is actually the strongest medicine for us. A lot of times when people hear the word reparations, they feel that they are being forced to do something against their will or that it's a punishment. But what I have found is that reparations are actually a doorway to joy and to healing and to personal liberation and to lifting the weight of that heavy burden that, I carry as part of this legacy. And so I have seen a little bit in the chat, references to reparations for slavery, coming to the table. So those links are in that document as well as some other ones. There are reparations networks around the country. And if this calls to you, I would super encourage you to join some of those networks and, take part in their programming and learn from them. And again, it's about community, right? Because it's about we can support each other walking through this path of reparations together and bear witness to each other. Or like I like to say, witness. We can witness each other and hold hands and encourage each other and offer each other accountability. And so you'll see more if you decide to go look at that Google Doc. But I just want to maybe make a little time if anyone has questions about that or thoughts or anything you want to share about personal reparations, feel free.
I see Pamela.
Hi, Hilary. I'm wondering if you could just give a little bit of an example of what you've done, just so it kind of feels more real to me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, before I forget, I want to mention that Lila June Johnston, who's a friend and mentor of mine and wrote the closing words in my book, she has just announced a class that sounds amazing. And she, in that class, will have lots of ideas that she is sharing. One of the most important entries to reparations that I have, taken on was originally taught to me by Lila. And it is the question, how, if at all, can I help? And so I have learned to really walk with that question as a guiding inquiry. So part of what I do here where I live is I take part in Indigenous-led community organizing. And I have learned to sit in those spaces just with that question all the time. Because, as Lila taught me, a lot of times it's easy for us to go into spaces thinking we know what needs to happen, right? And maybe we don't. It might be that something else is being asked for, something else is being requested. And it's really only by listening and being really still and quiet and patient that answer will start to emerge. So some of the things that have become part of my personal reparations plan have been in response to that question. And I've ended up, sometimes I take notes for the meeting. Sometimes I, am asked to go advocate for something before city council. And so I go do that. Sometimes I'm asked to host a meal. And so I cook dinner for everybody. Sometimes I'm asked to wash the pots after a big community event or wash the dishes. And so I do that. And all of these things are very simple. You know, they don't involve me being an expert or knowing having any particular knowledge set, but it's just about showing up. And so some of those things have been the most valuable pieces of my personal reparations plan. And then there are other pieces like I love to do monthly recurring donations to BIPOC-led organizations that are working on the issues I care about. So it could be, you know, seed sovereignty, it could be maternal health, it could be land back and rematriation. All of these things are things I really care about. So I have looked for organizations that are doing those work, and it's just part of my budget that comes out every month. Let's see, what else? Another piece that has been really important to me is to build relationship, you know, and it can be sticky, it can be hard to do across these divides, but what really makes that possible is showing up with steadfast commitment over time and not giving up when things get uncomfortable, not giving up when I make a mistake. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had to apologize. I've had to rethink things. I've had to learn how to behave differently, but that's all part of the process. The most important thing is to just be steadfast. So those are some of the examples of my plan.
I mean, I'm really glad you fleshed it out. I mean, my concern is just feeling so white.
Right.
In a room, I mean, you know, in a room full of Indigenous people and not feeling like I'm trying to invade them.
Right. Yeah. I feel you. I have felt that many times. And one thing that I have found that kind of paradoxically seems to have the effect of making me a more trustworthy person in those spaces is when I come in and I say, I am descended from settlers. My people are from Ireland, Scotland, and Germany, and that's who I descend from. And there's something about that, about laying, you know, you're naming the elephant in the room that actually creates, everyone can take a breath and go, okay, she knows. She knows that she's not just a white lady. She knows that she has a past before what happened here on Turtle Island, you know? And so that might be one way to start. Another thing is be ready to be teased and laugh at yourself, you know? I've been teased many times from day one, and you know, it's funny. It's funny because, you know, I've been teased about, for example, oh, good job. You sat through the whole meeting and didn't try to take over. Right? That's legit. That's what we do. That's what we've been trained to do. So it's good to learn to laugh at yourself and just know that, you know, making mistakes is part of it and it's okay.
And it looks like we have Jess next.
Yeah, in terms of reparations, back when we were both white collar working professionals before we became disabled in the last 5 years, but back when we had resources, we had a reparations budget and a line item in our budget every single month as a family. And we largely focused on direct giving to individuals. I'm online connected to a bunch of community organizers in Chicago, and so people are always raising money for, like, you know, people who need utilities or people who need food, or people who like need to repair their car or whatever. And so we would, in order to not overwhelm us, except for the couple of times I accidentally gave away too much, but most of the time we said, this is how much we can give to reparations every month. And some months when we were doing well, you know, it was $100 a month. And so we would just then give that out until it was gone every single month too. Black folks and Indigenous folks. And so now when I have a little bit, I can share, but it's like $5 every couple of months at this point, until our SSDI comes through. But I just wanted to let you know there are other ways, like you can also use direct giving to individuals. And for a long time, there was a young Black woman in college, and we sent her a check for $50 every month, just automatically through our bank account. As our work of undoing white supremacy and not hoarding wealth and sharing our resources and things like that. And so I just wanted to offer some other ways of thinking about reparations or things that you can do.
Thank you. That is such an awesome example, Jess. Thank you so much. I love it. And it will look different for every person, because the thing is, it comes from your heart. Like what I just heard you say, that totally came from your heart. So that's the most important thing, that it comes from your heart and not out of a sense of obligation or guilt. And then I see Kay has her hand up.
Thank you. You talk about laughing at yourself and the importance of it. Just this morning, I read a story about Desmond Tutu, who was very anti-apartheid, and he was constantly criticized and provoked because of his stand, and everybody was afraid for his life. And he went to a church to speak, and standing around the sides of the church were men with rifles, and everyone was living in fear that he would speak about apartheid. And what he did was he tapped into his feminine self, and he started to laugh. And he laughed and he laughed and he laughed, and the congregation started to laugh, and some of the soldiers started to laugh, and eventually they're all laughing, and he did speak about apartheid. So courage is a very important component of whatever kind of recovery work you're doing. And I respect the work you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kay. Thank you for that story. That's great. And Jackie?
That was just beautiful, Kay. What a lovely story. And thank you so much, Hilary, for your list of the many things that we can do. I just wanted to boost up a little bit a couple that you did mention. We I think often tend to default to individually what we can do, and that's good, in terms of our money that we give or letters that we write. And I just want to boost up solidarity with the struggles for land back. Because fundamental in relation to Indigenous people, the fundamental harm was the dispossession of Indigenous peoples from the land, and all of the rupture that created and the harm that it created. And so there are many ways those struggles happen, both in the United States and certainly in Canada. And then the other thing that goes along with that is supporting the struggles of Indigenous communities against things like in Canada, the pipelines, where they call for our support, like active acting in solidarity in a collective kind of way, I just think are really important for us too, in terms of building an alternative culture within ourselves that helps us to get away from some of the colonized culture that's in us. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Hilary. This has been lovely.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And I agree with you. I think land back and rematriation are some of the most pivotal pieces of work, because they have really the capacity to create mass consciousness change for me. And that's what we need. That's what we got to do right now. So thank you for lifting those up. And I'm wondering, should we move into our closing, Frida?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I'm just going to make a couple invitations here to the community. This has been really powerful. We're going to stay, please, because we're going to close in ritual together as a community with Hilary. And I want to just share, this has been so important, and I feel activated and also relieved, and I feel connected in so many ways. And next week, we are hosting a grief ritual practice. It's going to be a truth mandala, which will be facilitated by one of our facilitator members, Ina Alex. So I invite you to come to this offering. I think it'll be a little bit later in the day than this one. But this will be a great opportunity to be in community in one of the practices of the Work That Reconnects as well. And I do also encourage you to become a community member. This offering is for community members. So I'm just dropping those links in the chat. And before we leave too, because we will be closing with Hilary and then just leaving at that point in ceremony, I think we have a feedback form. So maybe you could just open that in a tab on your computer and fill it out afterwards. We really do appreciate hearing from you, and that's very helpful to our program. Thank you. So I am going to turn it back over to Hilary.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for being here and for participating so wholeheartedly, and for your courage to begin looking at these things, or maybe it's not even a beginning. I think many of you have already been looking at them for a long time, but to continue looking at them and, to be in community dialogue around this is really valuable. So thank you for being here. And we are going to, I'm going to hold up my bowl of water here with the spell inside. This water has been listening to us the whole time and has received and absorbed the messages, the prayers, the hopes, the dreams, the grief, the tears, the memory that has been expressed. And so feel free to dip your fingers in your water and give yourself a little blessing with it wherever you want to. And then when we're complete today, please go offer this water outside to a plant, or inside if you have an indoor plant, and let this water and these intentions nourish the plant life and the land too. And then I have my candle here; it's still going, and so we'll go ahead and sing. This is a smoring song. This is a traditional song from the Scottish Highlands that was used to smother or s'more the fire at the end of the night and bank it down so that it could be easily rekindled in the morning. So this is a way of working with fire where it's always, it's a continual, it's a cycle, it's a circle, it never ends. You're smothering it for the night, you're awakening it in the morning, but the fire is always there and it's always present. So this is asking again for the blessing of Brija on the household, the floor, and the entire world. Smally mi shantuola, mara smalag mora. Smally mi shantuola, mara smalag mora. Kain vricha is pura, serantula, seran Lord, seran horticula, serantuolula. Kain vrichor. Blessings on us all and on the whole world and on all of our relatives everywhere throughout time and space.
And let's just take a moment to see each other as we're bidding farewell. I've removed spotlight, so we're all in gallery view. And so just again, take a moment to look around and see who's here. And Hilary's invitation to go out onto the land with the water. Thank you so much, Hilary. This has been really incredible. And I will be seeing you next month. I did not put Hilary still has an offering coming up starting next month.
And you know what? I just looked through the screens and I saw one of our circle grandmothers, Molly Arthur. So Molly is going to be an elder for the Rekindling Ancestral Memory Circle this year. And she is going to be an excellent one because she has got a lot of practice in working with these topics. So yeah, we do have a few spots left if you're interested in joining us.
Thank you. So let's, as I like to do when we leave here, just invite everyone to unmute and listen to our cacophony of voices overlapping each other as we bid each other farewell, and much gratitude for your work in this world. all of
Can
you.
you say again what Hilary was talking about that still has a few openings?
I'm going to drop it in the link in the
Okay,
chat right now.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Y'all.
Thank you. Yeah. See
My heart.
everyone.
Happy